So, as you can see from the thumbnail picture, several years ago, money was raised for my medical needs, and GoFundMe, which I called and was told is a multinational corporation, not an American corporation. I asked if they were American or multinational. I was told they were multinational. Decided to seize my money on behalf of the Department of U.S. Treasury, refund it to some people, etc., 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 suspend the account, etc., 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 because there are sanctions on me. Why are there sanctions on me? Did I bomb someone? Did I start a war in a country claiming they have weapons of mass destruction when they don't? Nope. Did I drop the equivalent of 240 Hiroshimas, which is what the US did in Vietnam? Nope. Did I arrest a foreign diplomat the way the US has done to Venezuela? No. My crime was supporting the 32 county sovereignty movement. Now, the interesting thing about this was last year at this time, I was in the hospital. I was dying, and I was told that I have a 90 chance percent to live. I mean, to die. I pulled through. There was money raised, and it was sent to me. First, they asked me a bunch of auspicious questions, which I called the people who sent the money, and some of the questions were answered, some of the questions were not answered, and I was given the go around. And later, I found out that this money, which was meant for my medical needs, was also seized by the U.S. Department of Treasury on behalf of the Department of Homeland Security because of my support for a political organization. Now, we're hearing a lot about sanctions lately, and it seems to me the United States feel they have the right to seize whoever's money they want whenever they want. Now, when I talk about the United States, I include the Canadian government in this. Why do I include the Canadian government in this? Because the Canadian government is a colonialist settler state that does the will of both Britain and the United States. The Canadian government is not a government that serves the Canadian people, but rather, under Trump, Trudeau's foreign policy was pretty much the same as the Trump foreign policy. And under Biden, Trudeau's policy is once again the same as Biden's foreign policy. This group that I support, is it illegal in Canada? No, it is not. This group that I support, is it a criminal organization in Canada? No, it is not. Is it on the terrorist list in Canada? No, it is not. Is this a terrorist group in Ireland? No, it is not. Is it on the terrorist list in Great Britain? No, it is not. The only country that is on the terrorist list is the United States, because this group is pushing for Irish sovereignty, and it was the Clintons that brokered the Good Friday deal, which was a betrayal of Irish sovereignty. And as we can see right now, partition is still in place. Half of Ireland is under the economic control of the EU. The other half is under military and economic domination by the not so great Britain. Now, recently this was done to the truckers, and those on the left that did not like the truckers cheered this on. Just like the way that those on the right that do not agree with a lot of my politics cheered it on when money that I needed for medication was seized. Now, the reality of the situation is we live in a society that is supposed to be based on jurisprudence and rule and law of law. The reality is that it is not a society based on rule of law nor jurisprudence. It is a society based on the will of those who have power to do whatever they want. In terms of the GoFundMe for the truckers, there was no place in which they could appeal this other than GoFundMe, which, by the way, there are quite a few groups on GoFundMe that are raising money for Ukraine for people to go and illegally participate in a war of aggression, in the sense that Canada is not under attack by either Russia or Ukraine, can therefore Canada should have no say. And according to Canadian law, you do not have the right as a Canadian citizen to go in another nation and fight in another nation's war. But are these accounts being frozen? No, they are not. So, what is the sanctions? Who decides who gets sanctions and who doesn't get sanctions? Well, it seems to me it is the United States that decides who gets sanctions and who doesn't get sanctions. It was the United States that has put not sanctions but a legal blockade in Cuba, a country with 14 million people, not even allowing a single aspirin to enter the country. It is the United States that is telling Canada what its citizens can and cannot do. And I would like to just take this as a fact to point out that the more the Canadian government does this, the more the Canadian government, or allow this to happen to its citizens, the more it will be allowed to happen. Now, the whole idea of someone like me having sanctions proves the fact that sanctions are bullshit. Sanctions are a way in which the United States punishes those who have a different political view or who have different political orientation, whether they be individuals or countries. And if we do believe in freedom, if we do believe in jurisprudence and rule of law, there should be, and I am accused of being a terrorist. I should be allowed to answer that accusation and face my accusers. I should be told where and when I participated in terrorism, what terrorist acts have I funded, financed, or participated in, and what gives them the right to seize my assets. I wasn't given this. The truckers weren't given this. The state of Cuba was not given this. Venezuela was not given this. And now these Russian oligarchs are not given this, which is kind of funny because, like, what makes someone an oligarch? The way I look at it, we got quite a few oligarchs here. Why aren't we freezing their accounts and their money? Because it is not in the interest of the United States, which is run by oligarchs. Like, the very definition of oligarch is people like Elon Musk, people who have consolidated an empire off the back of the working class through theft, through slave labor, in the case of IBM and other nations, and other companies, through Nazi labor, and George W. Bush Senior, like George W. Bush's grandfather, actually sold Nazi Germany oil, but no one sanctioned the Bushes. They made a fortune in this. So before you get happy that someone is being sanctioned, look at what sanctions are, how they're being used, and what they're actually doing. Sanctions don't affect oligarchs who have money hidden all over the world. Sanctions affect people like me who have severe medical issues that need it. Sanctions affect Cuban children. Sanctions are responsible for the death of more than 500,000 Iraqi children before Operation Slavedom. Uh, and I think that, like, we need to not only challenge sanctions, but challenge the fact that Canada is enforcing a foreign government's will on its own citizens. Now, what am I talking about here? I'm going a little bit further than sanctions. I'm going to talk about the fact that I have been detained in Ireland because the Canadian government has informed Homeland Security, a foreign spy organization, that its citizen was leaving the country. This was also done to me in Brazil. And the fact of the matter is that this needs to be challenged. No one voted for the United States to be the world police. No one voted for the United States to run the affairs of the world. No one put the US in charge of the world. This whole thing about the Ukraine has nothing at all to do with freedom, justice, or any of the bullshit that we're told. What this really has to do with is that the US wants to have a monopoly on world politics, and they are once again coming into conflict with other nations whom they are interfering in their spheres of influence. Now, while I don't agree with spheres of influence, it was the United States that came up with the Monroe Doctrine that said that Latin America is their own backyard and no nation has the right to interfere in Latin America other than the US and corporations that the US like United Fruit, that did a coup d'etat, etc., 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 etc. So, yeah, before you start cheering when they take a Russian oligarch's ship, or when they put sanctions against the lefty you don't like, or the trucker, or whatever, just remember this sets a precedent that the state has a right to intervene in the sovereign affairs of individuals. And if they come for me today, they will go after others tomorrow. And to quote someone who is very famous, this is quite a famous quote: when they came for the Jews, I said nothing. I was not Jewish. When they came for the trade unionists, I said nothing. I was not a trade unionist. When they came for the communists, I said nothing. I wasn't a communist. When they came for the Catholics, I said nothing. I was Protestant. When they came for me, there was no one left to speak out. So I think it's important that we kick off a campaign around this, deal with these issues of sanctions, deal with the fact that the US, which has invaded more nations in the world and has military bases all over the world and has more military bases in other countries than any other nation, call who is and who isn't a terrorist. Like, I call what happened in Chile in 1973 to Salvador Allende terrorism. I call what happened in Guatemala in 1953 to Arbenez terrorism. I call what happened December 25th, 1989 in Romania terrorism, and what's currently going on in Romania as terrorism. I call the dropping of over 200 Hiroshimas on Vietnam because they wanted a different type of country terrorism. I call the bombing of Yugoslavia and the further destruction of Yugoslavia terrorism. That to me is terrorism, targeting civilians. I have not seen the 32 CSM target civilians, but I have seen the British target civilians. I have seen the United States target civilians. And talk to any Indigenous person. The reason why the Canadian state exists is because millions of Indigenous people no longer exist. Thank you for your time.